Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello, this is Deborah Johnson here with you today, and we have a special bonus episode for you. This is a short story my husband Greg wrote some years ago called The Innkeeper's Son. And I'd like to read it for you today, and I hope you find some joy in this little story and some things that will warm your heart this season. The Innkeeper's Son. In another time, in another land, lived a 12-year-old boy named Michael, who was the innkeeper's son. He lived in a small town which only had 2 inns, which kept his father busy, trying to get as many customers as he could. Life at the inn was busy. There was always too much to do. Mike felt lonely a lot of the time because his parents did not have much time for him. Now, Mike's family did take time to rest. They rested on the Sabbath. But for some reason, resting even seemed like a lot of work. Maybe because everyone took it so seriously. You couldn't play too hard. You might sweat. You couldn't eat what you wanted. Only things prepared the day before, because preparing food was work. For some reason, God seemed to even frown upon laughing too hard. Mike guessed that the stress on your face was considered work too. But all this fuss left him feeling distant from his parents. And from God, too. Fortunately for Mike, there was Samuel. Well, Samuel seemed to always understand and have the right words to say, which was odd because Samuel was his family's mule. Innkeeping couldn't provide all that Mike and his family needed. So they kept a small farm up, too, with a small barn and stalls, mangers, coops, and the like. Now, Samuel, he didn't really talk, but Mike talked to Samuel a lot. And whenever he did, well, Samuel could give him a look that seemed to say, I understand. Usually, by the time they would finish talking, Mike would always have a little bit better understanding about how to handle things. One night, Mike and Samuel were talking out under the stars when Mike asked Samuel, do you think God's too busy for us? He thought to ask this because he was looking up at the sky, and for the first time, he noticed there were an awful lot of stars out there. Look at all those stars, Samuel. Somebody's got to keep up with all of them, just like we do with the inn and with the farm. Don't you think God has to have a lot of other things on his mind than us? Mike had looked at the sky all of his life, but tonight it seemed was the first time he noticed how big it was. He was feeling like he had just probably unlocked an unknown secret of the universe when Samuel looked at him with one of those slightly disgusted looks that mules can give. He had seen it often when someone had been trying to get Sam to move when he just wasn't quite ready to. "What's wrong?" Mike replied. "It isn't that bad of a question." Mike was feeling pretty grown up and wasn't about to be brushed off with one of Samuel's standard answers. Well, maybe that is why fathers are so busy, because they're made to be just like God. Samuel then gave him another glance. This time, it was unlike any other with which Mike was familiar. Samuel seemed to know something that Mike didn't, and he seemed rather pleased about it too. "What?" Mike blurted out, feeling a little impatient with his friend. Just then, Mike heard his father's voice break through the still night air. "Mike, hurry up out there. We've got too many people tonight, and you need to find extra bedding." Mike had kind of guessed that this was going to happen. He wasn't sure why, but for a week now, more and more visitors had been arriving in town. The government had ordered all of the people to be counted so that they could better guess how much tax money that they could count on. Why they needed money was puzzling, and how in the world that they were going to count all those people was really beyond him. But he did know that since his father had heard about it, he had been both more worried and more excited at the same time. Worried because, well, he didn't know how he was going to bed down all the people and their caravans. But excited because a full house, it meant for the first time that Mike could remember that there would be enough money for the month. All Mike knew for sure is that there was now more to do than there usually was, and that for at least this month, if he wanted someone to talk to, well, Sam would have to do. As he walked back towards the inn, he caught a glimpse of light out of the corner of his eye. By the time he thought, that was strange, and turned around, it was gone. But he was sure he had seen something extraordinary out of the corner of his eye. It had been out on the horizon, just out beyond the hills. He looked back up at the stars. There was something special about tonight, more than the visitors, more than the work, more than Sam's newfound smugness. Something must be different, for the sky seemed to be hinting news to him for the first time. "Michael," his father began. Oh, Mike knew that the use of his full first name most likely spelled an explanation of displeasure from his father. "Would you like to sleep outside tonight?" His father's threat was only partially joking. Well, there had been many times that you could take his threat as momentary outbursts of frustration, well, not intended to be taken completely seriously. Mike could tell, though, this wasn't one of those times. "I could easily sell your room for a week's rent tonight, and it will be worth it too, if you don't wake up and do your work." Up until now, well, Mike had always felt like he had a safe place in his father's heart, but But now, well, he felt in danger of being dropped out. He sensed that he was in peril of being traded for a week's worth of windfall. "Mike, don't just stand there. Move," his father ordered. "And don't you let me see you stop until we get everyone settled." Mike hurried off. He took the threat seriously, but all he could really think about was how separated from his father he felt, and how separated he must be from God too. As he was returning from delivering more bedding, he overheard his father telling his mother of a couple he was setting up in the barn. Mother seemed hurt by the move because the woman was young and pregnant. But Mike's father was unmoved. "They're poor and can't pay what a room's worth. Besides, the only room left is ours, and I'm not going to sleep with the cows unless I get the right price." Mike was horrified. "What about my room? Did you sell my room?" he questioned inside his head. Disappointment swallowed him up. Soon, his fears were realized. He would sleep in the stable with the animals too. Well, on another night, this wouldn't have been that awful. In fact, on some nights, it would have been a treat. But that would have been on nights when it was his idea. And he and Samuel had lots to finish talking about. But tonight, it wasn't his idea. And all it made him feel was alone. He was deep within his own pity, shuffling slowly towards the barn when suddenly there were the sounds of a woman crying out. And then his mother screamed for him to bring some rags. Mike searched in a panic, but much of what was usually used had been taken earlier by the other guests. His mother shouted, "Hurry!" But Mike was running out of ideas. Well, just then, he thought to look under some things that he normally wouldn't have checked. And there he discovered some rags. He raced off to the stables. As he arrived, he was surprised by the fact that the young mother appeared to be having a baby. Soon, there were the cries of a newborn infant. His mother seemed pleasantly distracted by this unexpected privilege. His father merely grumbled, "We don't have time for this. Tomorrow's going to bring more work than we can imagine." And he slowly walked back to the inn to catch a short night's sleep. The excitement of the birth wore off as the night moved towards midnight. And Mike was beginning to feel the late night catch up with him too. With the unexpected birth and the encounter with the stars had added a temporary sense of importance to his otherwise routine life. But that was now being challenged by the fatigue closing in on his youthful body. As he began to settle down in a corner of the stable, protected from the weather, he heard the sound of a lot of people moving quickly towards the inn. "There's the stable. They must be in there," said one of the men. "Quiet," said another. "We don't want to scare anybody. Let's peek inside." They gently pushed the door of the barn open and shyly looked around its edge. Their inquisitive expressions turned to gleeful grins as they discovered the young parents and their baby. "It's just as the angel said," one of them exclaimed out loud to the others as they entered. Inside, as Mike watched all of this, he noted that normally the scene of a bunch of unknown shepherds arriving unannounced and then creeping up on a newborn baby would be the cause of some fear in the hearts of those watching. But in this scene, everything seemed to be expected and somehow okay. "Is that the newborn king?" asked the shepherd, who seemed to be the leader of the group. Well, about this time, Mike's father opened the door, obviously having been wakened by the voices of strange men, and just as obvious, not very pleased with losing even more sleep. He growled, "What's going on here?" There was a really long silence as the shepherds, they looked at the parents. The parents, in turn, they looked at Mike's mother, and Mike's mother anxiously looked at everybody because in reality, the answer was that, well, nobody knew quite yet. "Well, dear," Mike's mom finally inserted hesitantly, "we don't quite know, but I believe we are about to find out," as she turned hopefully to the shepherds. "What was it you were just asking?" Her voice was squeaking just a little, concerned that she had heard the question correctly the first time. "We were wondering if this is the newborn king," the shepherd responded. "The newborn king?" Mike's father interrupted. "Why would you stumble into town, wake everybody up, and ask such stupid questions? They are just poor travelers trying to hide themselves from the weather." Just then, the mother spoke up. Her gentle voice was quiet, firm, and confident as she spoke to comfort the group. "The shepherds have spoken well. This is the newborn king, and his name is Jesus, for he will save our people from their sins." She paused and looked inquisitively at the shepherds. "But how did you know that he was a king or that he would be born tonight?" Well, the shepherds needed no further encouragement to tell what had happened to them. Speaking all at once, they each were telling their version of how earlier that evening an angel had appeared to them. He was huge and glorious and had told them to come to Bethlehem to see the Savior, Christ the Lord. They would find him, the angels continued, by searching the stables. The newborn king would be the only baby lying in a manger. When the angel had finished speaking, a whole host of angels suddenly appeared in the sky, praising God through songs. Oh, well, at this point, Mike felt pretty proud because he knew he had seen the light of their glory in the sky a little earlier that evening. "So that is why we came to Bethlehem tonight," the shepherds concluded. "We knew there were not very many mangers that we would have to search, and there would be only one which would have a baby sleeping in it." Everybody in the room was suddenly awake. Mike's father walked toward the parents and their baby. "You mean the Christ has been born in my stable?" Mary, the mother, nodded in agreement. Mike's father found a stack of hay to collapse on and sort of crumpled down on it. Well, it seemed as though the whole world had just settled on his shoulders. "Mother, Mike, come over here," he gestured, signaling them to come and sit by him. "I've never believed God really cared for me. He always seemed too big, too important, too busy. I figured if I didn't take care of myself, well, there wasn't going to be anybody who did care one way or the other. But it appears tonight that the Lord has spoken to us and said, I am not too busy. In fact, I think I'll come down from heaven and stay a while. I am sorry I have been too busy. I guess I was sort of being the same way that I imagined God to be. How about we let the king and his parents get some rest and go get some sleep ourselves? Tomorrow, I want us to begin to take some time and enjoy each other, even if there is way too much to do. By this time, everybody in the barn, the shepherds, the parents, and especially Mike's mom, had tears in their eyes. Even Samuel seemed to be touched by the moment. Mike couldn't keep from grinning. Mike's father and mother began to head back to the house. Arm in arm, they motioned him to join them. I'll be there in just a second. I want to say goodnight to Samuel. Mike went over to Samuel's stall. You were right. God wasn't too busy for us, Mike apologized. Samuel seemed extremely smug by now. You're not always right, so don't give me that look, Mike said with a joking laugh. Samuel just snorted and nodded his head. Then he nuzzled Mike affectionately. They both then turned and looked at the new parents and their baby as they continued to talk with the shepherds. I've got no idea how this is going to turn out, Samuel, but I have a feeling that tonight is going to be remembered for a really long time. And well, nothing has really changed. We still have all of these guests, the farm work, and not enough money to really keep from working too hard. But it sure makes a difference knowing that God is with us. It makes a big difference. With that, Mike gave one last sigh and gave Samuel one more hug and headed off to bed. For people through the years, not much has changed. Many still find themselves too busy. There is still way too much to do. At times, all of us feel alone and even abandoned. But because of a baby born in a manger, we can know that God is with us. And what a difference that makes. Merry Christmas, and may the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Written by Greg Johnson. Read by Deborah Johnson. All rights reserved. The Innkeeper's Son.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.